Hello and welcome. My name is Emily Prieto, and I'm the co-host of the Seeds of Tao podcast alongside my husband, Joshua Prieto. We're also the co-owners of the Seeds of Tao education platform, an incubator for regenerative entrepreneurs. If you're new to the podcast, this is a podcast for impact entrepreneurs creating regenerative enterprises. We often get asked what exactly a regenerative enterprise or impact entrepreneur is. So if you're wondering, a regenerative enterprise builds triple bottom line profits through the practice of ethics and principles that lead to a more inclusive, fair, and balanced economy. Impact entrepreneurs, or regenpreneurs, as we sometimes like to call them, are those willing and able to take on the financial and personal risks of starting and building regenerative enterprises. You'll get to know exactly what all that means as you join us for this and future episodes, but know that we welcome everyone to join us as we work to build regenerative economies together. That's exactly why we are here doing what we do at Seeds of Tao. Our mission is to help establish regenerative economies in every bioregion by serving individual regenpreneurs like yourself. In this podcast, you'll hear the startup stories in all their glory from impact entrepreneurs all over the globe. You'll learn and grow the skills of building a regenerative enterprise from your peers, mentors, and leaders. Finally, we'll get to know each other as you engage in the podcast and join the wonderful Regenerative Business Economies Network, aka RegenBen, an open community where peers, colleagues, funders, allies, and supporters of regenpreneurs come together to build and the regenerative economies of the future. Join us every month for a wonderful episode as we collectively move beyond sustainability and into our regenerative future. It all starts now. Welcome to the Seeds of Tao podcast. I'm super excited to have our guest on. Over in Europe from today, we have Minou Schillings. Hello.
Hello. Hey, nice to be here today.
And so we are going to start out on the podcast how we start out every time. And we love to ask, what got you up this morning? What gets you excited to do the work that you're doing?
Oh, wow. Up this morning. I was up this morning at 5. That's normally not how excited I am to get to work. That was just the heat. But I normally get excited in the morning because my work is it's pioneering. It's explorative, which means that I'm in a space where everybody is super excited, super happy to finally work with people that really want to transition to a new paradigm, like a regenerative paradigm, where we put life at the center of everything. But it also means that there's a lot of unlearning and learning to do, a lot of experimenting, a lot of collaborations. It just feels like a dance, like playing. Like it's definitely a challenge to embrace uncertainty. But I've always loved that in life. And I think that is a really big pro for me in this sense, because working in the regenerative space, working towards a future that is so drastically different from where we are living in today and how businesses look today and what we do as like entrepreneurials in the traditional sense of the word. It is really exciting, but it also really means being able to be flexible, to move, to dance with whatever emerges, to follow an idea, a good dynamic, an interesting new concept. Basically, every day brings something new.
Yes, I think that is so common for those of us working in regeneration because we're like forging these new paths, right? And so things always come up that maybe we don't anticipate. And so we have to be flexible while we're still sticking with the plan.
Or not.
Or not, yes. So how did you get started doing the work that you're doing now in all the regenerative space?
So it actually, I could go back quite far. So when I was 4, no jokes, I won't go that far. But I've always been this really curious person. I never really accepted the status quo. The whole answer, it is because it is like that, or that's tradition, or that's how it's always been done, or that's just how the world works. even as a kid, it just didn't sit with me. I was like, no, I mean, that makes no sense. There should be an explanation, and otherwise there is a way of doing something better or different. And then throughout the years after my my studies, after my bachelor, I started a social sustainable innovation studio built around the design sprint concept. And it is called the Green Sprint, and the focus was to help businesses accelerate their sustainable innovation processes. But I kept running into the same problem, and that is that if you start innovating straight away, but you're doing that without having tackled your mindset or the set of assumptions and beliefs, the organization culture, all of these things that frame your thinking and that also frame the result of an innovation process. If you haven't addressed that first, everything that you will come up with either will sit within the old paradigm, maybe a bit better, but still upholding the status quo, or it will move beyond the old paradigm because you're just lucky with the group of people that you were working with, but then it isn't adopted within the organization because the organization in its whole isn't there yet and isn't ready to be like the soil that embraces this new innovation. So I decided to circle back to what my master's degree was in, and that is creativity and innovation, and more specifically lateral thinking. And lateral thinking is looking at a challenge or an opportunity and from different perspectives. So instead of always following the same ingrained patterns that you have, try to completely take a new approach and break free from these ingrained thinking patterns. And these ingrained thinking patterns, all of these assumptions and everything that frame our belief, is what is holding us back as well to innovate, to really come up with solutions that will shift horizons. So I decided that is the space that I should be in. And then only once I've worked long enough with people we've worked together, we have explored this regenerative mindset, we have unlearned, we've learned, only then can you actually start to accelerate innovation, not before that. That's why I'm now doing what I'm doing.
Awesome. So it sounds like you went straight from academic studies to entrepreneurship then.
Yeah, actually. I was doing my master's degree, and then during my master's degree, I started the Green Sprint. Yeah, and I did the same with my bachelor, where in the last year of my bachelor, I started, don't laugh at it, Schillings Innovation. It's a bit of a ridiculous name, but that was during my bachelor. And then I realized, okay, I really don't have experience enough. I should continue. So I traveled, I did my master's, and then during my master's, I started with the Green Sprint, which wasn't regenerative oriented straight away. I was familiar with the concept, but only from an agricultural perspective, because I went to an agricultural university, not an agricultural bachelor, but it's set within that university. So you come into contact with it. But regenerative agriculture, although all of the same principles still apply, is definitely not as fast or interesting, I would say, as regenerative businesses. Like it is super interesting, but it's just a part of it. Yeah.
Absolutely. So what was that transition like for you? Like you're doing your studies and then you're also trying to start these businesses, but like entrepreneurship has a steep learning curve, right? There's a lot of things you have to learn to do all of a sudden. So how was that growth time for you, really stepping into the shoes of an entrepreneur?
I was really frustrated a lot. I was doing a couple of things at the same time when I started out. So that was also like maybe just a bit too much at the beginning. So I was doing my master's degree, and also my thesis was in the topic of entrepreneurship. So I was exploring how nomadic entrepreneurship versus location-dependent entrepreneurship influences your business opportunity recognition process. So I was already exploring an alternative way of doing business and already diving into the entrepreneurship space. Plus, entrepreneurship was also a big part, sort of the frame in which my master's degree was set. So that helped. But at the same time, I was working on a co-living business together with someone. He founded that a couple of years, and then I joined later as co-founder. And then I was doing the Green Sprint. So in hindsight, no idea how I still had a social life at that point. I learned a lot from it. I was both businesses. I had business partners at first, but I think we were not sure of our own capabilities and experiences yet. And it's like a marriage. You really have to know yourself before diving into it. So I learned a lot from those two partnerships. And I think I expected for myself I think a lot of people who start a business, to be successful faster. And then throughout the years, it's like, yeah, Minou, you at the same time are you're unlearning business as usual. You're learning everything about regeneration, about sustainability, not only from a technical perspective, but from a social perspective, philosophical perspective, business perspective. Then you're doing all the admin stuff. Learn how to design, copyright, market, find the right target audience, do market research, and then all of that. I'm like, okay, maybe it takes a couple of years. It's okay. But yeah, you have to work on it. That wasn't there at the beginning, sure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So it's interesting that you started out doing things with some different partners. Lately in our think tanks, that's a really common challenge that people are having. Like, how do I take on a co-founder? How do I deal with that dynamic? Having gone through some of those partnerships, do you have any advice to people looking to take on partners, or maybe they have a partner in mind, or any of that dynamic? Do you have any words of wisdom for that?
Yeah, take it slow, very slow. I always compare it with, like I said, in the marriage. So you wouldn't meet someone, go on 2 dates, have an awesome idea about a potential marriage, and just do it without knowing each other. And that is how I often see that co-founders find each other, like nowadays. So they barely know each other. I've done the same, but they connect over an idea, they connect over a dream, and then decide to merge and just go for it together. And I would really advise early stages, find a small thing, find an MVP that you can work on together, find a little project that you collaborate, something that doesn't put the pressure on. Because if you go down the road of first really getting to know each other, I've tried that as well, without putting a lot of emphasis on the product or the idea that you want to collaborate on, you can get lost in getting to know each other process. But if you skip that process and go right into the, working on an idea, you can get lost in the idea and you don't know each other. And that will, at a later stage, lead to problems. I would say find something small, find something that you can collaborate on for a couple of months and see how that goes. And be honest, which is also hard. Also to yourself. Because I really wanted a business partner. Like some people really want a life partner. That's not a really good reason to start working together or to marry. It's like it should fit. Not just because it does. Yeah.
I hear you. And I really echo what you were talking about, how it's important that you know yourself first, right? Because sometimes we can get in partnerships with people, and if our strengths are too similar and our weaknesses are too similar, it's not a beneficial relationship, right? We need to be complementing each other. We had a business partner back in our branding agency, and have you ever read the book Rocket Fuel?
No.
It talks a little bit about how at the heads of businesses, there's this like visionary person and there's an integrator person. And that balance is really great because one person is looking long-term vision and has all the big ideas, but they can't integrate those things very well. And the integrator can just take the vision and start breaking it down and doing it,
right? And in our branding agency, we had 2 visionaries, and it was a nightmare. And we ended up exiting that. Josh, my husband, is very much the visionary, but I'm the integrator. And so we found a good dynamic with that, given we're already married. But that visionary integrator dynamic, if you can figure out which one you are, it's really helpful to have the other person think a different way. So you're complementing instead of like bumping heads all the time.
Yeah, we definitely had that problem as well. That's the interesting thing with us was, so we were both visionaries, particularly systems thinkers. So all of our conversations went big, big, and then we tried to like tackle something small, and we ended up, I don't know, 3 hours into a philosophy discussion about the difference between principles and pillars, or like how everything is connected, and like do you have leverage points, or like there were always these things like, okay, where are we going to get with this? But then when it came to, because we facilitators in our core, when it came to working with others, we were really good at like bringing it down, integrating it, breaking it down in chunks, asking the right questions. It's like plumbers with leaking pipes, right? But we never managed to do it for ourselves, because when it came to us, we were both these visionaries. Indeed, very hard. A lot of amazing conversations, but it doesn't build a business.
It's true. It's true. And there's a lot of that in regeneration. There's a lot of big conversations and big ideas, but a lot of times the business follow through is really hard for people.
Yeah, it's one of my biggest concerns, especially because it seems that, like, okay, it took us 4 decades or something. I mean, not us. I wasn't born 4 decades ago, but around 4 decades to get sustainability into the boardrooms. And now we're switching to regeneration, where a lot of businesses aren't ready. Like, lots of them are, and lots of them have the right intention, and they want to explore. They're curious and open-minded. But definitely not everyone is there yet, where the regenerative space is a space where people are so passionate about this potential, about this future, about this way of living. It makes so much sense. It just, once you start reading about it, talking about it, learning about it, I think for me, it felt like it clicked. Like there was always something that just didn't add up in life. It just didn't make sense. I was like, okay, this makes sense. This I get. Here I can completely stand behind, which means that we read and think and learn and chat about it the whole day. But it also means that we're sort of spiraling into this conversation where the topic gets deeper and deeper and deeper and more complex and more down to the nitty-gritty of like certain topics and certain definitions and principles and how you could explain them. And it becomes very inaccessible for everybody else. And that's dangerous. That's not where we want to be, I think.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So you come from a background in a university that was dealing with regenerative agriculture. However, that wasn't what you were studying, right? But you're getting into regeneration, and then now you're in a place helping businesses to be more regenerative. So, but regeneration, I know, can sometimes seem really nebulous for people, right? Like a regenerative business, what exactly does that mean? So what does that mean to you? What makes a business regenerative?
That's a really good question. So I would also like to explain something before we dive there. I don't help businesses to become regenerative per se, because that's something that a business should do themselves, if this makes sense. Like, I can't just transition a whole business to become regenerative. What I can do is work with people within the organizations who are already like impact driven. They are intrinsically driven. They are really frustrated. They are in a place where something doesn't make sense and they want to drive this transition to a better future, but they don't have the knowledge, the insight, the know-how, the where to start, the frameworks, the everything. to actually, in a legitimate way, start empowering this transition, start moving this business, like shifting the horizons of this business. So what I do is enable these potential internal change makers and equip them with everything they need, the mindset and the capacity, so they can become the people within the organization who can help the organization to become regenerative. And whatever, how I would describe the regenerative business. So in the core, like the most simplest version, I would say that a regenerative business puts life at the core of their decision-making process. So whatever they do, whatever they create, which that like all the value they create, all the decisions they make, all the products they develop, all the ways that they collaborate, the purpose should be to enhance the well-being of both social and ecological life. But you're right, that's a bit fluffy. But in the core, that would, but in like more of a structured way, I would say that means that on multiple levels, so on a nature level, on a societal level, on an employees, stakeholders, customers, on all these levels, they should be creating multiple types of value. So not only financial value, but also intellectual value, ecological value, like psychological value, artistic value, all of these. And not only in the creation stage, but also in the delivery stage and also in the stage where it's like used. So in that way, you can actually really start, from a holistic perspective, zooming in and seeing how you can start regenerating certain elements of your business. But I would say that overall, it is about at least leadership, but preferably everyone within the organization, because like hierarchy wouldn't be a regenerative way of running a business. Embracing this new mindset where they put life at the core of their decisions, and that's hard. That's not something that most of us are used or trained to do, and it requires a lot of conscious leadership, a lot of conscious developing and exploring and constant tackling yourself. And I think you experience the same, like we probably will be learning and unlearning until the day we die.
Absolutely. It's having that beginner's mindset all the time, not assuming that we already know. And like you said, unlearning a bunch of the stuff that probably slipped in there when we weren't even paying attention, right? Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, that happens a lot. We carry things when we're a kid and this is, we question things, but things just sneak in there that shape our view of the world and how it works and our place in it. And especially with the people in regeneration, I think it's really common for us to question a lot of those. Like, of course, this doesn't make sense. Clearly, we can do something better. Clearly, we can increase our impact, but it really is that regenerative leadership, like you were talking about, so that not only are we changing our own mindsets, but we're using our leadership and our influence and our voice to help others who maybe haven't questioned it as much as we have or are on their path, right? I feel like there's such this community of people who we say like they speak regeneration, right? Like you can't speak regeneration to everyone because they won't get it. But the people who get it really get it and really connect on that level because we feel like we're speaking the same language and we have these very similar values. But there's a lot of people really not in that space who are kind of interested in that space, or via the term sustainability, right? Is kind of like a gateway word to regeneration sometimes. But that regenerative leadership, or that leadership aspect that you were talking about, what are the big challenges that you're seeing in that space?
Embracing uncertainty. I would say that's the number one challenge. Like, even businesses that are really impact oriented, really purpose driven, still have that deep need for control. And if you're talking about a paradigm shift, as radical as we are discussing and as radical as is necessary to create like an earth, a society, a future where like all living systems thrive, we need to embrace uncertainty. We don't know. We cannot know, and we cannot wait to act until we know. We can't put everything in data. We can't control everything. And this can be really hard. It can be really hard to inspire or invite leaders, people in general, to start making changes if they don't really know what these changes will result in. They can't prove with data that that's the right pathway. And the interesting thing, there is enough data that shows that we can't go on like this. And there is also sufficient data and sufficient like logical thinking that explains that regenerative leadership and in general just regeneration is the way forward. It's just simply how life works. But the argument that's how life works. And in the bigger span of things, the bigger span of time, life is what it is. Like this earth, like everything we do, everything we dream, everything, it's just life. But that's not the best argument for a business to start changing or to start transitioning. So I would say helping leaders, helping people to embrace uncertainty and you can do that by helping them to imagine alternative futures, because we're definitely in a crisis of imagination. For sure. But if you have to embrace uncertainty and you cannot imagine a better future, no way. That's not happening. But if you can tap into your imagination, if you can unlock your imagination and you can really think of all of these futures, all of these potentials, and you can explain them in a way that is so vivid, so colorful, so real that you can almost smell it, then you can start embracing uncertainty because you know there are all of these potential futures that you're working towards, and that is how they could look like.
Let's take a moment to talk about your own personal regenerative journey. Both Josh and I care deeply about you, the path you've taken, the work you've put in. It's absolutely critical to helping us transition from systems that take life into systems that bring life. You are critical to that transition. Seeds of Tao believes in you, the entrepreneur that has found that business is more than about just creating profit. It's about the impact you have on life and the life you nurture. There's responsibility and even risk in that role. This is why you listen and observe to what Mother Nature is telling you, what your community is telling you, and what your heart is telling you. As you're listening, you cultivate a regenerative enterprise that respects and nurtures life. This is why we believe in you. You are the keystone species that is critical to life on this planet. Everyone has their part and no one else can play yours. As the entrepreneur, you're going to face challenges and feel like everything is working against you. It's a lonely job and you get stuck, face rejection, learn skills you never thought you'd have to, and are constantly placed outside of your comfort zone. It's times like these that Josh and I have found ourselves holding on to one simple truth. We are all connected. You were never meant to go it alone, and it's not the way that nature intended it to be, so stop trying to. Seeds of Tao is now launching its first paid regenerative enterprise incubator to support you during the most difficult parts of your journey. This is a 6-month cohort where we will not be holding your hand as an entrepreneur, but rather we'll be helping you to swim on your own. There's a lot of responsibility and risk you took on when you jumped into the water to become an entrepreneur. You're not only going to learn to swim, but you're going to get to dry land. This incubator is for the impact entrepreneur that has already jumped in the water and is now working through the most difficult part of their journey to triple bottom line profits. The most critical skill you'll need along this journey is to determine, set, and accomplish the most important goals for your business. On day 1, you will set the most wildly important goal for your business so that if you were to accomplish this goal,
it would transform your business more than anything else you could have done. In this cohort, you will do the work and build the habit of becoming a resilient and impactful entrepreneur. Are you wanting to find out more about the first cohort? If so, check out the link in the description or the show notes. I think that's also that same explanation for these businesses is so applicable to the entrepreneur themselves, because entrepreneurship, you have to be okay with uncertainty for like a lot. Just to take that idea and follow through with it. And sure, I can come up with a bunch of data, but who knows if people are really going to buy it, you know?
Yeah. I think that might also be why you see a lot of like young startup founders pushing for things that are drastically different, and real disruptive innovation often doesn't come from corporations. It comes from startups who then are bought by corporations, because once you're at the stage that you're a corporation, like that embracing uncertainty that a founder started with is probably long gone. And there's so many things, so many dynamics at play that block this acceptance of uncertainty. But yeah, we should really be seeking that in, I would say, either startups or smaller organizations. Yeah.
Yeah, it's at play differently. Like you said, like it's for the bigger corporations, it's harder for them to make bigger change because there's so many moving pieces, and they've been doing things, and they have investors, and they have stock, you know, they have all these people that have a voice in what's happening with the business. And the earlier startups have so much more flexibility to create what they want. At the same time, personally, they have to deal with, well, I'm not having a 9-to-5 job that I'm for sure going to get paid for. And maybe I'm putting all my money into this startup, and hopefully it's going to go great because I have this really amazing vision. I really liked how you brought up the aspect of imagination and that kind of those visualization exercises, because I think that it's especially important in regeneration. We all deal with the struggle of that overwhelm. Like things are so bad. There's so much destruction. There's so many people not caring, that, you know, all of that negativity, and we can get just lost in it if we let ourselves. And so that aspect of hope and imagining like a better future and how we're going to create it can be really powerful to kind of keep that at bay and put us in a proactive space instead of reacting to all of the crazy media and everything.
100%. I have a whole Miro board dedicated to companies that I would like to see in the future. Pictures of like solar punk, where like there's this regenerative societies. Just like visualize it. I have like a value tree of like values I would like the society to build around, and this whole board. But how we can move from what is to what if, and all the what if questions that I would love us to answer. And I spend more time on that board, I would say, than I spend on the news or social media, because I mean that is indeed just reactive. But also a lot of it is negative energy. It's pointless. There's something that you cannot change anything about. Like, yeah, we can change the way that we collaborate, that we co-create. We can steer businesses in a certain direction, but there is no use of me knowing of another car crash, another murder, another like all of these things, all of these incidents, which also is just not healthy that we are aware of all of them. That's not how the world ever worked, and it's not something that our brain can cope with. So I would say, yeah, definitely be very conscious with where you put your energy, and are you focusing on the future deliberately? And then also you have to do that throughout your whole life. You can't just do it. You can't just work on a regenerative future from 9 to 5 and then read the news and play shooting games and do all of these things like in the evenings. Just, I don't know. Maybe some people do. I just don't see it happening. It doesn't fit. Yeah.
You kind of have to pick where like you said, where your energy's going, and if you're going to do anything about it. You know, I feel like so much of the news is everywhere. There's really not anyone generally like really ignorant of everything that's happening. Like people know that there's these environmental challenges and everything, but stepping into that place of, okay, that's happening, but what can I focus on in the future? What can be my proactive part in it? And I know that you and I are kind of aligned because we really push a lot of focus on, well, from a business perspective, we can do so much. Some people in regeneration push their energy towards, activism and towards kind of grassroots community things. And other people, we put a lot of stock in regenerative entrepreneurs and regenerative businesses because we think that's going to be a great angle to increase impact. So how do you see helping these businesses and help the people in these businesses to make this transition? What is the strategy for you in terms of that impact? How do you see that amplifying and creating this regenerative future?
Mm-hmm. So I think there's one little hiccup there. So the way that I like to work, the way that I like to help people is it's very co-creative. So it's facilitating of co-creative processes. And they're either unlearning processes or they're educational processes, exploring like new skills. So capacity building, for example, around systems thinking, or capacity building around just understanding the regenerative principles, or coping with silence, like all of these elements. But it requires a lot of person-to-person work, because I think person-to-person work is important, and especially with a transformation that is so deep, so all-consuming, so holistic. I think the conversations, the mutual explorations, the actual helping these people by coming from where they are and meeting them where they are is really important. It's also not really scalable. So I'm still exploring, okay, how can I create that impact? Maybe not in a way that's scalable, because not everything has to be scalable, but amplifiable indeed. How can I amplify that? I think a big part of it would be that it is because I'm enabling internal change makers. So sort of counting on them to create the ripple effects, which once you work with someone to unlock their potential and you've equipped them with all of these insights and knowledge around regenerative businesses and also new ways of working and thinking and being, they will amplify they will create more impact by driving the transition within their organization. And then eventually, I think the right thing would be to start helping other people to create this change within their organizations. It's a classic train the trainer thing, I would say. Yeah, that's a way I would say you can amplify, because they understand their organization better, but they might not have the insights and the knowledge or the time to explore everything and to go down this road. So if I could help someone within the organization to embrace the regenerative mindset, to be able to facilitate the generative business model, innovation processes, and all of that, that would really make a big change, because I can't go into all organizations, of course.
Absolutely. So you mentioned the regenerative principles that are being applied to businesses. What are the big ones that you see or that you value or that you acknowledge in terms of regenerative principles in a business being applied into a business? How do you see those?
So there are a couple of main ones, I would say. I think one of the most important one, of course, like discussed before, is life affirming. So like life as your decision making compass. So you can't get around that one. It sits at the core of everything. And with that, of course, comes systems thinking. So being able to be aware of your system, to understand that your organization is a part of it. It's not a siloed operation. You depend not only on other organizations, but on the whole web of life. You also understand the dynamics within that system, and then you will be able to see, okay, how can I enhance these dynamics to improve life instead of destruct it? I would say that compassion is a really big one, because our current capitalistic model, our current way of doing things is very much built on apathy. Literally just, you stop caring sort of where your nose ends. And that doesn't work, obviously. And empathy is also not enough. You can't just understand how someone else feels. We really need to take ownership of the problems of other living beings, of other businesses, of other stakeholders. So compassion is a really important one as well. There's so many. One that you can really apply in a beautiful, tangible, and more quite practical way, in a way that people understand straight away. I would say seasonal, cyclical thinking. Something that, and businesses maybe not so often think about, that like it's always summer in a business. It's always summer. It's reaping. And I'm like, how can it always be summer while the rest of life goes through seasons? You can't just always keep taking and never going in hibernation or reflecting or taking it a bit calmer. And it's also something that employees need. We can't always be in summer mode ourselves either. Like, we need these winter periods. We need these periods of reflection. It's just for our well-being and burnout levels. It's a very important thing. And then this whole way of seasonal thinking, you can really apply that. You can really imagine how you can apply that within your organization. So I often like to start with that one, because it's good to have something that is relatively tangible to avoid this whole big overwhelm of, okay, I don't know, this is also connected, this is embedded, this is so systemic, like where do I start and what? Want to avoid that.
Totally. We really like to, on a even less than a seasonal aspect, is just with like the lunar cycles. Our energy waxes and wanes so much with the moon. And so we incorporate that into our planning when we're pushing, when we're reflecting, because going against that is just chaos for us. We've found so much more just harmony with where our energy is naturally at. Building our projects and our efforts around just that, the moon cycles have helped us a lot.
Yeah, that makes total sense.
Yeah. Cool. So where can people get a hold of you and get involved in what you're doing now?
I mean, the one place to get involved would always be LinkedIn. That's where I would say lots of my presences, my thoughts are, my explorations, and where I invite other people into conversations, explorations. And that's definitely the go-to place. So that would be just Minou Schillings on LinkedIn. And once you're there, you also immediately see what I talk about the most right now, which is something that I'm super excited about. And people say that I sort of start glowing when I talk about it. But a couple of months ago, launched a retreat on the Camino. And just to zoom out a bit, 2 years ago, I went on the Camino myself, the Camino de Santiago, which is a really long hiking route all through Europe. And then to Santiago de Compostela. Originally, and still, it's a pilgrimage. It's a religious pilgrimage, but I did it for like non-religious, but definitely spiritual, explorative reasons. And whilst walking, honestly, it's the best, I always say it's the best modern life bullshit antidote, because you create a distance between yourself and your work, your vanity metrics, everything that society expects from you. You're reconnecting with yourself, you're connecting with nature, you're connecting with it like a very natural cycle of just waking up, eating, walking, thinking, reflecting, eating, sleeping, and doing it all of it again. And there's something in that simplicity that allows your brain, I would say, allows yourself to go in to embrace certain mindsets, to embrace certain things that you've always been thinking about, maybe, or maybe never been thinking about, but that never clicked because always the noise of the world was there in the day-to-day grind of your business. Was after walking and discussing that with Amy Brown, who I'm running this retreat with, we realized, okay, if we really want to help people to move from what is to what if, and to embrace a mindset that is exploring regeneration, that is life affirming, that is the capacity to embrace uncertainty, the ability to imagine different futures, alternative futures. We need to create this space. And the best way to do that, whilst connecting with other people who are as well, just as you on a regenerative journey, would be to go on a very long hike. So we're now inviting aspiring regenerative leaders or impact-oriented people to this retreat, which is a 4 or 5 day hiking retreat where you're going to walk from France to Spain and just, I always say, unwind, unlearn, and rewild your mind. So be talking about that a lot. So I really hope that I see some of you listeners there. That would be great.
Awesome. That sounds so amazing. I wish it was closer to where I'm at.
I know. Yeah, we definitely don't want people to fly in for it.
Definitely.
If you can hitch a sailing boat or something, I would say come along.
I know. If it was, 4 kids makes it hard to really go for long periods because they're still pretty young. But one of these days, it sounds amazing. Sounds amazing. And I've seen, you're just a prolific writer. You have all types of content that you're sharing on LinkedIn about unlearning and relearning and mindset shifts and things. That's really awesome. And I think it's really, really needed. Like you were talking about before, about how, it starts with our mind, like that will just be a bottleneck in our journey of regenerative change if we can't get past the mental blocks and unlearn and relearn so that we can approach things with more of a regenerative mindset. Our impact will be so limited. So we've got to start with kind of that zone 0, right? So that we can amplify everything else.
Yeah, of course. Everything what we do is a result eventually of ourselves, what's happening in us, what we're thinking or feeling. So if we're not addressing that first, everything is indeed going to sit in the old paradigm and we'll just have a lot of, half-baked things that maybe move the needle slightly in a better direction, but don't really transform what we want.
Absolutely. So we will include your LinkedIn information in the show notes so everyone can go to the show notes to connect there. And thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today. It was such a pleasure.
Thank you as well. It was really, really fun.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks everyone for listening. And don't forget to check out the links and the show notes and the accompanying blog posts that go along with the podcast. And everyone have a great day. Keep on building your regenerative businesses and increasing your positive impact. Bye.
Thanks for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed the podcast. It really is a blessing and a pleasure to bring each episode to you. So what'd you think? If you enjoyed this podcast, please leave us a review or follow us on the podcast platform of your choice. Each review really does help us to further the reach of this podcast and move our mission forward to build regenerative economies in every bioregion. If you have a suggestion or feedback for us, please let us know in the open and free Regenerative Business Economies Network, known as RegenBen, which is linked in the description and in the show notes of this episode. RegenBen also has an awesome community request form that allows you to suggest guests, register to be a guest on the podcast, and share your own regenerative entrepreneur startup story, or any other suggestion you may have for the community. Without your feedback and requests, this podcast and community wouldn't be what it is, so please let us know. Now, this may be bye for now, but remember, it doesn't end here. It has only just begun. The regenerative economies of the future start now with you.